Does God foreknew everything or God predestined everything? What is the truth behind this? Stay till the video ends. But first, listen to this conversation.
Come, let's roast people who are against biblical Christianity.
Did Judas Iscariot go to hell for betraying Jesus?
No. The question was about Judas Iscariot, whether he went to hell or heaven from the public side.
But why not? He had no choice. And it was already predestined what was going to happen. God already knew that he was going to betray Jesus when Jesus came to earth.
That was the question. God already knew that Judas is gonna betray Jesus when Jesus came on the earth. Let's see the role reverse. What happens? How the apologetics ends.
Okay? And yet I would argue that Judas Iscariot did not have to betray Jesus.
That doesn't happen in the Bible.
We read that the devil prompted Judas Iscariot. In other words, the devil did not propel Judas Iscariot. The devil prompted him.
Of course, the verse also says the devil prompted Judas Iscariot to betray Jesus. That was not bad.
In other words, Judas Iscariot was tempted to betray Christ. He didn't have to, he chose to. Now you're right, God knew he would do it.
He doesn't have to, but he chose to. But how? Because it was written in a predestined manner, or God foreknew that Judas is gonna betray Jesus. What was the truth behind this?
Well, God knows what I'm going to do as well. Not because God has programmed me a certain way, but because God's perspective is outside of time.
Maybe, as per his sayings, God is outside the time, but he is also the controller of time. If not, why there are certain verses still speaking about Judas Iscariot's betrayal?
God sees all of history at one glance, is my understanding.
His understanding is different from Bible. I think the person who asked the question had the right understanding.
Therefore, God sees what I will freely choose to do tomorrow. God saw that Judas Iscariot would betray Christ. Now, Judas and Peter are a fascinating contrast.
Now listen carefully to these two contrast people, Judas Iscariot and Apostle Peter.
Judas Iscariot betrayed Christ for 30 pieces of silver. Peter denied knowing Christ 3 times. Both were overcome with a sense of guilt.
No, sir, both occurred or happened because of Jesus' word. How? Wait for a few minutes.
The difference is, Judas Iscariot turned to despair. He took the 30 pieces of silver, he threw them back at the feet of Christ, and he went out and hanged himself.
Of course, he had the guilt that he betrayed an innocent blood. That too was to fulfill the word.
Peter, on the other hand, after denying Christ, turned back to Christ for forgiveness.
He didn't turn back to Christ for forgiveness, but Jesus himself, after his resurrection, came to him and opened his mind.
All of us are either like Judas or we're like Peter. All of us know at times guilt. We know that we've done wrong. Then we choose how we handle our guilt.
So according to his saying, if Judas could have repented there, so Jesus would have offered him forgiveness. But he didn't do. Hence, he hanged himself on the tree and died bitterly. To the contrast saying, Peter on the other hand, repented and accepted Jesus. Then he received the forgiveness. Isn't that too hard to digest?
Suppress it, turn to despair, rationalize it away, or else like Peter, we allow our guilt to drive us to Christ for forgiveness.
Okay, sir. One thing we came to know, that if what we choose, what we will, what we wish is going to happen, but not according to God's will, not according to his predestined plan, and not knowing his foreknowledge and understanding. Here comes the question. Does God allows everything to happen in his way? Or does God allows everything to happen in people's wish and will? The big answer for this is God does everything according to his will and according to his ways. In order to understand the predestination and the foreknowledge, we must come to a conclusion and listen to what Jesus himself said to his disciples. Again, in order to understand this notion, we must check the disciples and their election. Let's read from the Gospel according to John chapter 15 verse 16. You did not choose me, but I chose you, appointed you that you should go and bear a fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. The Bible clearly says that God, Jesus, chose us when? Before the foundation of the world, in him, in love. That's what Ephesians 1st chapter 4th verse says. So the election of the apostles, the disciples, represents the election of each Christian. There are some vessels for good purpose, there are some vessels for bad purpose. That's God's will. We can't question him that why you made people to be bad and why you made people to be good. According to God, all are sinners, but because of his grace and forgiveness, we become righteous. So among these 12, the one was of devil. The Bible says he was predestined for that task. If not, why this verse occurred in the prophecies? Let's read Acts of the Apostles, 1st chapter, 20th verse. When the apostles were gathered in order to choose and complete the 12th member of their team, they quoted these verses. For it is written in the book of Psalms, may his camp become desolate, and let there be no one to dwell in it. This was quoted in Psalms 69th chapter 25th verse. And let another take his office. This statement was quoted in Psalms 109 8th verse. So these verses are the prophecies upon Judas Iscariot. For he must be born, raised up, join with Jesus' disciples, and later betray Jesus. Then the election of somebody else from the other disciples must become one of the 12. So do God miss in his foreknowing things? Absolutely not. Let's read from Romans chapter 8 verse 29 onwards. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he glorified. Here comes the thing. God predestined. God made his rules and ways, everything in a planned manner. And we people, once were sinners, understand this thing later, then connect with God's will and his ways. So he predestined so that he foreknew the things gonna happen. That's why it is written in the book of Revelation chapter 13 verse 8. There is a living book in which the names of the elect and the reject are already been written before the foundation of the world, and that is the book of the Lamb who was slain. So my conclusion is this: Judas Iscariot betrayed Jesus according to the word of Jesus and according to the prophecies. Peter denied Jesus according to the word of Jesus and according to that prophecy. It's not people's choice. Let's see something interesting from the Bible's view about predestination and foreknowledge in our upcoming video. Bye.